This weekend, Washington became the stage for a major showdown that every gun owner in America needs to pay attention to. For months now, there's been a determined effort to get suppressors and short-barreled rifles out from under the heavy hand of the National Firearms Act. And let's be clear, this isn't about some minor paperwork adjustments. This is about wiping out the $200 tax, ending the invasive registration requirements, and reversing decades of bloated government control. Momentum was building fast, thanks to strong legislative bills and growing grassroots pressure. But just as it looked like real change was within reach, one unelected official in the Senate slammed the brakes. Her decision sparked outrage, confusion, and a political brawl that could shape the future of gun laws in this country. Today, we're breaking down exactly what went down, who's stepping up to fight it, and where this battle is headed next, because trust me, this fight is far from over. Let's not sugarcoat what's at stake here. This isn't a debate over some niche gun accessories. We're talking about practical tools that countless Americans own and use. Suppressors and short-barreled rifles. These have been stuck under suffocating regulations since 1934 thanks to the National Firearms Act, a law born out of fear and misinformation nearly a century ago. Ever since, owning a suppressor has meant coughing up a $200 tax, submitting fingerprints, photos, and then waiting months for approval, just to buy what is basically a muffler for your gun. The same ridiculous hoops apply to rifles with barrels shorter than 16 inches, or short shotguns. It's never really been about safety. It's about government control. That's why bills like the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act were put forward, to finally pull these items out of the NFA's stranglehold and put them back into the hands of everyday Americans without all the red tape. This isn't theory. This is about your rights, your property, and the basic ability to follow the law without being buried under bureaucratic nonsense. But just as things were gaining serious traction, everything slammed into a brick wall. And it wasn't voters who put up that wall. It wasn't even elected officials. It was the Senate Parliamentarian, an unelected staffer, who decided over the weekend that pulling suppressors and short-barreled rifles out of the NFA couldn't be done through the reconciliation process. Her reasoning? She said these changes weren't primarily budget-related. Let that sink in. Even though we're talking about taxes, fees, and a giant government registry funded by taxpayers, she claimed it wasn't budget enough. With that single decision, she ripped the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act right out of the current reconciliation bill, effectively erasing years of hard work, public support, and committee victories in an instant. What's even more maddening is the hypocrisy. She apparently had no problem with reducing the tax on any other weapons to zero, but refused to apply the same logic to suppressors and short-barreled shotguns, items that are also taxed under the NFA. That glaring double standard has Second Amendment supporters absolutely livid. If it's okay to cut the tax on one type of NFA-regulated item, why not the others? And here's something most people don't realize. Her ruling isn't law, it's just guidance. The Senate can override her decision anytime they want. They've done it before. But that takes backbone. And right now, too many senators seem more worried about upsetting procedural norms than standing up for the people who elected them. This wasn't some dry technical call. It was a clear move to shut down progress. And the gun rights community? They've responded exactly as they should, loudly, forcefully, and with every bit of righteous anger this deserves. A few roadblocks don't mean the journey's over. And we saw that play out almost instantly after the Parliamentarian dropped her decision. Instead of folding, pro-Second Amendment lawmakers and gun rights advocates quickly pivoted. Within mere hours, they were already drafting fresh language to keep the mission alive. So, what's the new approach? It's pretty straightforward. Cut the NFA tax on suppressors and short-barreled rifles down to zero, while leaving the existing registry intact for now. Sure, it's not the total NFA repeal everyone was hoping for, but it's a smart, strategic move designed to keep the fight alive within the reconciliation framework. Here's the argument. If the Parliamentarian was okay with dropping the tax on any other weapons to zero, there's absolutely no logical reason she shouldn't approve zeroing out the tax on suppressors and short-barreled shotguns too. Same law, same tax code, same exact structure. Those new proposals have already been sent back for review. The ultimate goal? Start dismantling the NFA piece by piece, beginning with the hefty costs that stop regular, law-abiding folks from fully exercising their rights. And this isn't just about cash. If that tax drops to zero, we'll see millions more suppressors and short-barreled firearms flow into civilian hands, making it easier to challenge these laws later under common-use legal standards. Some call it a compromise. Others see it as a calculated wedge that could eventually topple the entire outdated NFA structure. Either way, this language is gaining traction. This is what real tactical political pressure looks like. When one door slams shut, you don't stop, you find another way in. While lawmakers were busy rewriting plans, gun rights groups and everyday activists didn't skip a beat. They kicked into high gear with a unified message. This battle is nowhere near done. The second the Parliamentarians' decision dropped, alerts lit up inboxes, phones rang off the hook, and social feeds exploded. Organizations across the board rallied their members to bombard senators with calls and emails, demanding they either keep this new pro-gun language or outright reject the Parliamentarians' recommendation. Some groups focused on educating the public about how reconciliation actually works and reminding everyone that her ruling isn't binding. Others went harder, calling for her to be fired entirely. Meanwhile, legal teams started quietly prepping to take this fight to court if Congress caves. And this didn't stay confined to D.C. conference rooms or committee memos. Gun owners nationwide jumped into action. In just hours, thousands of calls flooded into Senate offices, overwhelming staff. For many senators, it was the loudest roar they'd heard from voters all year. This is what opponents didn't anticipate. They thought this ruling would kill the momentum. Instead, it supercharged it. Now, every major gun rights group, national and local, is throwing its weight behind this push. They might have slightly different playbooks, but they're all united on one thing. The Parliamentarians' move can't go unchallenged. This is grassroots politics in its purest form. Not just lobbyists or big checks. Real Americans raising their voices, refusing to back down. That's how lasting change gets made. Inside the halls of the Senate, the heat is cranking up. The Parliamentarian might have issued her opinion, but ultimate power sits with Senate leadership. It's on them now, specifically the Senate President and President pro tempore, to decide whether to follow her guidance or toss it aside. And let's be real, this isn't just some boring procedural squabble. This is a raw political gut check. It's about whether leadership stands by the voters who sent them to Washington or hides behind the ruling of an unelected staffer who just torpedoed one of the most popular pro-2A reforms in years. Sure, her opinion isn't legally binding, but ignoring it takes guts, and it has precedent. Because remember, the other side has overruled parliamentarian advice before when it suited their agenda. They didn't flinch, and they won. So why should this time be any different? Meanwhile, the backup plan, the amendment to slash the tax to zero, is inching through the process. It's moving cautiously, but it's still alive, quietly picking up more allies. If it sticks, it's a concrete win. If it gets shut down again, then the gloves really come off. Either way, the next play is on Senate leadership. They can stand tall with millions of Americans, or they can hide behind red tape and hope the outrage cools off. But spoiler, it won't. The longer they drag their feet, the louder and angrier the public gets. As this new language started weaving back into the legislative mix, the public reaction only grew more intense. This wasn't just chatter on gun forums or niche blogs. It was front-page headlines, viral social posts, and direct heat on Senate offices. Americans are fed up. They're tired of watching technicalities snuff out meaningful reforms that have broad bipartisan support. And it's not just hardcore gun owners anymore. Hunters, competitive shooters, veterans, people who actually use suppressors and shorter firearms are speaking up. They're saying, look, this isn't about loopholes or exotic gear. It's about practical tools, fairness, and freedom. With the 4th of July around the corner, the symbolism couldn't be sharper. As folks prep to celebrate independence, the Senate faces a choice: bolster liberty or dig in deeper with bloated bureaucracy. The House is gearing up to revisit this bill soon, under enormous pressure to strengthen the rollback of the NFA, or at least lock in that zero tax provision. Meanwhile, gun rights groups are prepping for all scenarios. If the Senate folds, lawsuits are waiting. If the House strips it out, the public fury will hit a whole new level. There's also a wild card: national leaders. If influential voices keep echoing the outrage of everyday Americans, it could tilt the balance. Already, this flood of calls and emails has pushed some senators to rethink their positions. Just a bit more pressure might break it wide open. Whatever happens next could shape gun laws for a generation. This moment has grown into something far bigger than just suppressors or short barrels. It's become a full-scale referendum on government power and how hard regular people are willing to push back. This isn't just policy on paper. It's living proof that organized, informed, relentless citizens can shake even the most dug-in political forces. Whether this bill survives intact or not, one thing is clear: the fight is evolving, and the energy behind it is only getting stronger. Thanks for staying locked in and standing up. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're reading every single one. Your voice puts real pressure where it counts. Stay alert, stay driven, and we'll catch you in the next update. Because this story isn't slowing down, and neither are we.